Welcome to the Progress Texas Happy Hour.
Welcome to the Progress Texas Happy Hour. I'm Advocacy Development and Coordinator Tatum Owens. The May elections provided a growing, familiar feeling for progressives in Texas: victory. That's right, Democrats and progressives won May elections all over the Lone Star State, a phenomenon that many have attributed to the rise in authoritarianism. A pattern emerged in which school board members and candidates who had taken part in censorship, book bans, and bigotry lost to those who proposed positive visions of change, built on campaigns dedicated to infrastructure and justice-driven policies. This spanned from strengthening our public schools as a major top issue to supporting working families, to creating affordable housing, and more. This was true for DFW, Houston, Austin, and across the state. For this episode, we want to highlight the unique perspective of several candidates who saw those widespread victories and still have to cross the finish line. We've got runoff candidates from across the state joining us here as an opportunity to remind y'all to show up and vote on June 7th or before during early voting in the high-impact, usually low-turnout runoff elections. San Antonio was the exception for this statewide trend. We knew it was going to be this way. There's a ton of different races with lots of candidates. And voters will have to show up on June 7th or before, again, to vote for mayor, Districts 1, 6, 8, and 9. Today, we have the incumbent for District 1, City Councilwoman Dr. Sukh Kaur. Dr. Sukh Kaur is a 16-year public school educator and small business owner, the CEO/founder of Ed Reimagined, where she supports the launch of innovative school models, and she is the City Councilwoman for District 1, the incumbent candidate in the June runoff election. Thank you for being here, Sukh.
Thank you so much for having me.
You have a long list of credits, and I'll let you introduce yourself in just a sec. But if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself, why you're running, and name some top issues for your campaign.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you all so much for tuning in. It's been an honor to serve as the councilwoman for District 1 over the last couple years. I actually got into local government because I was a part of the education system, like mentioned, for so many years. And I felt like addressing poverty and the systemic issues of inequity that exist within our community often lie on the backs of teachers, and we can't rely just on them and put that pressure solely on them. We all have to get in on this together to make sure we are focusing on issues that affect our youth and affect the long-term longevity, success, and opportunity in our community. So some of the most important issues that have come up in the last couple of years are infrastructure, like mentioned. If you walk across the district, you're able to see the difference in infrastructure based on the neighborhood that you're in. We started a project to look at a quarter-mile radius around schools to really assess what those streets and sidewalks look like. What is the drainage? What are the traffic accidents, crosswalks look like around schools to allow for safe passageway? Some of the other issues that have come up are affordability within neighborhoods. If families are moving from neighborhood to neighborhood for the lowest rent, it's going to be difficult for them to get a strong education. So we have to keep people in their homes and make sure that all of our housing that we're building is affordable and maintenance of the houses that actually exist. And then the last priority area that we've been really focusing on is our parks and community centers. We believe that everyone should have access to a thriving park. We've been focusing on one San Pedro Springs Park, which is actually the 10th most historic park in the country, to make sure that the community that's using it has the amenities that they deserve.
Next, we'd love to hear your thoughts on the influx of support for progressive candidates and policies in the May election. As an incumbent, just 1% shy from taking home the vote, what do you think is the connection between what voters want and what your policies can provide?
Thank you so much. Yeah, we were so close. And I know we were watching at one point, the news media had said 50% because they rounded the 49.6 up. And so there was a lot of cheering, but we realized, okay, there's just a little bit short of the 50 we needed. I think what we saw in this race was there was a lot of candidates. There were 10 candidates, and I think that goes to show the diverse needs of District 1 and how it is a microcosm of the city. I always say that if in District 1 we can truly address preserving our neighborhoods while still allowing for community to enter, live affordably and safely, then we've done the job right for our whole city. And so I think that's what we saw, is that we saw folks that wanted to support a candidate who really did believe in that responsible growth that preserves the neighborhoods while still allowing for people to live.
I love that. One of the other candidates in your race pointed to looking for a vision for change. And once again, I point out your unique perspective as an incumbent, as the sitting councilwoman. What do you think your constituents have liked best about your term, and what are you most proud of having achieved so far?
Yeah. So I think what residents know that they'll get from me is an individual that will look at each policy on their own merit. City council, while I am obviously a Democrat, is a nonpartisan seat. And so I will always look at each policy to determine what is the best solution going forward for all of our residents. And I think residents have seen that I truly want to be a council person for all 150,000 residents that live in District 1 and not just the few that have the ability to show up to meetings. And so that means we will go out and block walk to really understand what are issues that are affecting our residents and how do we support that. And so there's a couple that we've been most proud of pushing forward, but one of them is a cultural heritage district for the North Main area, which is the LGBTQ plus area, or a large part of the businesses that exist there are LGBTQ plus IA supportive. And so we were able to work with the community to create that as a cultural heritage district. And that's going to be approved in our June council meeting. So we're super excited about that. In addition, we've been working with SAWS and CPS to make sure our construction projects are completed on budget and on time. We found out that so many folks, when they're doing construction and they're bidding on projects, don't actually know where utility lines are underground. And so we put in a policy to require subsurface utility engineering, which I learned how to say in Spanish, and because I do speak Spanish, but I didn't know how to say these technical terms. But utilidades subsuperficiales is how you say subsurface utilities.
Well, yes.
So we're really excited that one moved forward too.
And we've already touched a little bit on how your background is primarily focused on education. Could you speak a little bit to our statewide audience who has seen movement with the voucher fight, and maybe give some perspective on how San Antonio is really representative of the fight for public education across the state?
100%. So I am a public educator through and through. I was educated in the public school system and truly am proud of the education I received. And I want to make sure that everyone has access to that great educational opportunity. I also do a lot of financials for some of our school districts and understand how difficult it is to actually get that high quality education under the current financial model. It has been so difficult, particularly post-COVID, and we have to get innovative and creative because of the lack of state funding that we receive for public ed, which is one of the lowest in the entire country. And so this voucher bill is only going to hurt even more because while I do support public school choice, and I've always shared that it's a part of the innovative models that I have supported because I believe that not all students learn the same. So they should have the ability to go to a project-based learning school or an IB school based on their individual needs. I also know that with private schools, one, as a person of the Sikh faith, we're now funding essentially no longer believing in the separation of church and state. And then on top of that, private schools don't have to actually follow state laws in terms of TEKS or curriculum that they're allowed to teach, or taking exams that the rest of public schools are required to do. So there's just so many inequities that exist by funding using this voucher bill. So it is going to really, really affect our community. But what is great is that our community has advocates on local government, on the dais, that know the importance of education and will fight every way that we can to ensure we don't let our students fall through the cracks.
100%. And we have a sitting councilwoman that's working to keep that fight going as per the June runoff. Let's see. That's about what we have for you today. Do you have any last thoughts, any resources you want to point our listeners towards?
No, we just need to get the vote out. Please turn out. Please go share with your friends. It is such an important race in a lot of the San Antonio Council races. We are essentially fighting what our local community wants and needs versus what our state government thinks that they should be able to control for us. And so it is really important that we keep people on this council, on the dais, that really care about representing our community. And so I just want to echo that. Please go out and vote, and excited to serve another term, hopefully.
From District 6, we have a rare, exciting race between two progressive candidates, and both of them have agreed to join us. Rick Galvan was born and raised in District 6 in the Piper Meadows neighborhood, currently serving as president of the Neighborhood Association. A proud graduate of Holmes High School and UT Austin, go Horns, Rick was raised by a family of educators with a background in community organizing. He witnessed D6 grow and change rapidly over the past years, with working families like his own feeling the pinch of the rising cost of living and becoming his top priority. Candidate for San Antonio City Council District 6, Rick, thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tatum, for the incredible introduction, all the hard work y'all are doing over there. My name is Rick Galvan. I am running for San Antonio City Council District 6, and I'm extremely proud to be here to talk more about this campaign, especially as the election is coming up very soon. And so excited to talk more about our vision and what we're working on and making sure that we get across that finish line and win this victory for our working families here in District 6.
Extremely, extremely exciting, and thank you again for being here. Let's just first start out with introducing yourself and why are you running?
Yeah, thank you very much. So my name is Rick Galvan. I am running for City Council District 6. I was born and raised in District 6 in the Pipers Meadow neighborhood. My family, my parents both came from the inner west side of San Antonio. My mom is a lifelong educator who teaches in District 6 in public schools as a preschool teacher. And my dad served in the Air Force, going and working from moving into civil service, working as a mechanic for Kelly Air Force Base, Lackland Air Force Base, and then Randolph Air Force Base. And it's because of that service that we were able to afford the home that I grew up in the Pipers Meadow neighborhood. And I'm extremely proud that after growing out there my entire life, knowing the neighbors in the area, I was able to become more involved in the neighbor association in the area, become elected to be on their board, and then elected to be president of the neighbor association over the past couple of years. Working together with neighbors has been an exciting experience, advocating for our parks in the neighborhood, making sure the vacant lots were addressed, and overall advocating for a safer and cleaner and more prosperous community overall together. My work at City Council as well, in my current career, is working as a City Council Director of Special Projects for City Council Office District 5, which encompasses a lot of the inner west side where my family originally came from. And so it's been really incredible working on these two pieces of this district, of both the outside of working with my neighborhood that I grew up in, as well as the inside of working in City Council for the community that my family came from. And so that's been really fun, making sure that we are addressing the issues constituents have, directly bringing city services to them, as well as addressing and overseeing a lot of these city programs and policies City Council and City Council committees oversee. And so it's with all those experiences, growing up in the district, serving as a neighborhood leader, and delivering for residents while working at City Council, that I decided to run for City Council Office District 6, my home, because I'm committed to making sure that the city continues to grow, we leave no neighborhood behind, and that our folks are able to live in safe, affordable, and quality place to live in here in our city.
Thank you so much, Rick. Could you name some top issues for your campaign, why they're crucial for the growth and support of Texas working families, laborers, and folks?
Yeah, absolutely. The biggest things on our campaign that we've been focusing on is, one, the rising cost of living, and the main part being the rising housing costs here in our city. We know for homeowners and renters alike, it has become a bit tougher to either get into the housing market to own a home, or to make sure that you're able to continue to live in the home that you maybe had for a while, as well as even rent to start a family here in our city. And what I want to make sure is that our city continues to grow, that all of our neighborhoods are able, or all of our residents are able to afford a place to live here in our city. That means expanding home opportunities, housing opportunities for families across our city. It means making sure that we're also expanding our home repair and weather addition programs for folks to live in dignity here in our city. And it means making sure that our utility rates, which thankfully the city of San Antonio oversees both our public utilities for SAWS, for water, and for electricity and gas with CPS Energy, making sure that those utility rates are affordable and that our highest energy users, especially our largest corporations, are paying their fair share over our residents. And so that's one of the biggest issues that I've been focused on, making sure that our folks are able to afford to live here. But beyond that, too, it's also our quality of life, right? Making sure that our infrastructure investments are really meeting the needs of our communities, especially those that have been left behind more often. But so, too, making sure that all of our streets are safer for pedestrians, drivers, cyclists, and bus riders alike. It's also making sure that we're investing in our parks and our community centers so that they are not only more modernized and more resilient, but also expanded so that they can reach more folks throughout their neighborhoods. And folks don't have to leave out of our district to go to places for their kids to enjoy, for themselves to enjoy, for their kids and for themselves to learn and grow beyond the education system too. And just to have fun and to have the recreation that they deserve to have here in our city. And then finally, it's also making sure that our communities are safe. And so investing in a holistic public safety system that really makes sure that we are supporting our first responders with the resources that they need to really address the issues at hand. But so too, looking at the root causes of crime and violence and addressing them in the full front. And that means investing and expanding our animal care services, make sure that we are expanding our mental health resources and investing in our violence interrupter teams too, to really break those cycles of crime and violence that we see in our communities.
Yeah, community in every sense of the word. I love to hear that. Thank you for sharing. And definitely go check out Rick's website. There's a long list of issue priorities and hits the mark every time. I'll tell you that. Next question for you. We'd love to hear about your thoughts on the influx of support for progressive candidates and policies in the May and also November elections, if we're talking policy specifically. Do you think your race was part of this trend? And largely, what do you think is the connection between what voters want and what your progressive policies can provide?
Yeah, no, thank you for the question. I think a lot of times we hear some of these policies be put into different little boxes of what really works for working families and what really doesn't. And I think sometimes these kind of labels on partisanship makes it harder for people to understand what things that they're really pushing for. And so when I talk to folks at their doors, and we've been doing it since December, we often talk about the rising cost of living. We talk about public safety. We talk about these holistic and long-term views on a lot of these issues, even with infrastructure, right? And a lot of folks get on the same page regardless of our partisan leanings or maybe who we're voting for mayor or who we're voting for in the past November election, because we all agree that our neighborhoods should be safe places to live in for not only ourselves, but for our neighbors as well. They should be places that we are proud of to call home. They should be places where we can afford to live, and our kids and our seniors too can afford to live here in dignity. There are different ways that we can do that, but a lot of folks agree on that making sure that these pieces are getting done is how we make sure that our city continues to thrive for all of our working families. And that's the biggest reason why I made sure to not take a cent of corporate real estate PAC dollars to my campaign. So we launched this campaign back in August because there is that commitment, right? That folks on every single side understand that politics is also a money game. And we want to make sure that as much as we can, we don't have strings attached to us, but except that we're having the backs of our working families all the way through. And so I think that kind of message has been resonating a lot with our residents in our district. The message about coming from this neighborhood and really understanding the complexities of it all, the differences of every single side of the district, and understanding that even if we may have different political leanings, even if we may have different backgrounds, we can all agree that our streets deserve to be safer, that we deserve to feel proud of our neighborhoods and have things that we can go to access. Our small businesses can deserve to thrive in our communities, and that we can afford to live here and not be pushed out. And so too can our kids and our seniors as our city continues to grow, that they deserve to live in the neighborhoods that they've called home and they've built here.
Thank you, Rick, so much for that. Our next question for you is on young progressives, which you are. Your election is an exciting one with two progressive candidates and a runoff, which is a growing but rare phenomenon in Texas races.
Yeah.
Our last question for you touches on young progressive leadership. We're seeing more and more young folks running for office, sometimes met with resistance, and we're wondering about how you think we can keep the momentum going.
Yeah, thank you for the question. You know, when talking to folks at the doors, that was something that I was initially concerned about, that how folks are going to interpret a young person coming to the door and saying, I'm running for represent you at city council. We were met with a lot of positive attitudes about it, actually. A lot of folks are saying it's exciting and refreshing to see folks coming out who are younger, who are more excited about their communities, who want to be involved and who have been involved too. And who we feel confident in to not only understand our communities because you've grown up here your entire life, or you've really made an impact on this community overall in some form or fashion. And now you're being able to do this work that we're able to trust that you're able to do it at the city council level too. And so that's the kind of reception we've been receiving, even if some of our political leans are a bit different. Folks are saying, I appreciate, though, that you have been involved. I appreciate that you understand these issues and that you're willing to talk to us about it, even when we don't agree sometimes. I appreciate that you're willing to have the energy also to be out here in 105-degree heat or in freezing temperatures or in hail or in rain, but you're here to talk to us because you care about this community and you want to make sure that it thrives with all of us in it. So that's kind of the biggest things that I would say has been some of the most successful parts of this campaign, is that no matter the kind of perception some folks have of this campaign, we're able to really meet the folks where they're at and talk more about how we can really build a better community for all of us by working together. And so that's why I'm really proud that, you know, even without having to adjust my values, things like that, folks have been able to jump onto this campaign and join this kind of big campaign that we've been pushing for that really advocates for our working families and for our folks here. I'm really proud to be endorsed by several labor unions across the city, whether it's our city employees union or the AFL-CIO, or our teachers and public school teachers and staff unions in both Northside ISD and SISD. Organized communication workers, hospitality workers across the city are joining onto this the campaign because they understand that a campaign that's fighting for working families, regardless of your political leanings, is one that's going to be sure that we are working for everybody here. So I'm also proud to be endorsed by even some of my former opponents in this race, in the May election before the runoff, who have various different political beliefs than I do. But I understand that this collaborative leadership approach is how we're going to make sure that we get these things done. And that we don't go away either when we get elected, or neither when we finish the election either. Our folks are still here. We're still going to work together to make sure the budget's done well for all of us. We're still going to be here to make sure that advocating for our growing communities and that we don't leave anyone behind. So that's the kind of vision that I've been laying out and why we've been able to bring so many people on board to this campaign and finish almost in a statistical tie between my opponent and I in this first race.
And I'd love, before we finish up, to hear a little bit about the success of your campaign. You just mentioned it was an extremely tight race. And I'll also just note, thank you for sharing again about what the response from people as you knocked on so many doors, hearing that young progressives are actually, we're pounding the pavement, and you have a long history of being just so involved in your community. And so I think that people see that and they respect that, and it bypasses that hesitance entirely. So please tell us a little bit about the campaign as we finish up and how successful it's been.
Yeah, this campaign has been a lot of fun. We launched our campaign back in August 2024 for a campaign that was, meant to end in May. Of course, we're here in the runoff, and I'm very proud to have made it to this runoff and that we're going to keep doing that work, and we have been. But we started early because we wanted to make sure that we had the resources we needed, right? We know it's tough to run a campaign. We know it's difficult to make sure that we have the resources that we need, especially when we're not taking the real estate or corporate PAC dollars to this campaign, but instead focusing on grassroots donations, making sure that we're building community all the way through. And we're really proud that we were able to raise over $8,000 in our first few months of this campaign for our first-time candidate. We were able to raise $4,000 in the first month of announcing this campaign. And beyond that, all the way up until May, we raised over $25,000 in this campaign from grassroots support, with the overwhelming amount of folks pitching in $45 in the average contribution from hundreds and hundreds of donors, individual donors across the city. And so looking at that has kind of shown the power of this grassroots campaign, the vision that we've laid out, the power of making sure that we are coming together and really pushing for this on a grassroots scale. We don't have a big consulting firm on our campaign to really help us get this work done. It's really been a grassroots effort from myself and a few folks on this campaign who are dedicated volunteers. And we really did this hard work and making sure that we're building this campaign in a robust way where we bring in more volunteers who go out and hit the doors with us all the time, bringing folks in to make the phone calls on the rainy days or the really hot days where we're just not able to get out there. Making sure that we are all able to really not only go out and do the work, but also enjoy the work that we're doing too, right? After doing this campaign work, we make sure that we hang out with each other, talk more about our lives, and not just focus solely on this work that we're doing, but not forgetting it either, right? And it's because of that work that we've been doing since December after the November election, hitting the doors every single weekend, and then also throughout the week. And now in this runoff, ever since Election Day, we have been knocking doors every single day, making phone calls every time we can. I've got this wonderful tan from it all that I'm really proud to be able to maintain, not get worse, but because sunscreen's not my best friend. That's largely because of poll greeting too, which has been very important too. But that commitment to meeting our folks where they're at, that commitment to really talking with residents everywhere they are, is how we were able to get this far. As someone who, of course, who is a younger candidate who has some really decent experience working at city council, it was some kind of concerns of maybe we wouldn't get this far. I think the media kind of wrote us off a little bit, which was fun. And now here we are, which is, again, a statistical tie between my opponent and I, because of that work we put in here, because of the work and the values that we've kept and maintained, that even when folks didn't agree, they said, but I respect the fact that you are talking to me about what you care about and how we can do this together in some form, even when we don't agree on every single thing. And so that is how we make sure this campaign is going forward, by running on our values, by making sure that we are really rooted in community that we are meant to serve, and that we're doing the hard work to get us there.
Thank you so much, Rick, for being here. Before we finish, do you have any last thoughts, things you want to shout out to our statewide audience?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to everybody who has been involved in this work and making sure that across our state, we are building more folks, building more power for folks who are really fighting for working families here in Texas, and of course here in San Antonio, in my home city, making sure that we are really putting our working families first and making decisions at City Hall, the state legislature, at the county commissioner's court, or other places as well too. And so we're going to need everyone in this together to make sure that not only does my campaign get across the finish line, but that all these campaigns and all this other work that we're doing, legislation gets across the finish line and supports working families. And so if you are here in San Antonio or you know folks in San Antonio, you have friends, family, middle school crushes, everyone in between there who are here and need to go vote in this runoff election, know that Election Day is June 7th, but early voting starts May 27th and lasts through June 3rd. And so we need everybody in this to make sure that we get across the finish line here. But thank you for the opportunity to talk today.
DFW and North Texas friends, Progress Texas is excited to invite you to join us in celebration of our 15th anniversary in Dallas. Come meet and mingle with political movers and shakers, lawmakers, advocates and activists, and just plain cool Texans who, just like you, are digging in for progress in the Lone Star State and loving every minute of it. Tickets and sponsorship opportunities are available now at progresstexas.org. Thanks to generous folks like Howard Cleon, Charles Zeller, Pamela Pearson, Chuck Cruz, Amy Forehand, John Mazzaro, and many others for their kind support. Join them and us to celebrate 15 years of progress on Monday, June 9th in Dallas. Details and tickets now at progresstexas.org.
Kellyanne Gonzalez is here today as a candidate for San Antonio District 6 with a long list of endorsements. She's a labor organizer who most recently worked for AFSCME, the labor union representing City of San Antonio employees, a small business owner with a screen printing business for nonprofits, local campaigns, and churches, and she's also a Democratic precinct chair. Kellyanne, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me here. Thank you, Tatum.
Glad to have you. We can just start with introducing yourself to the audience. Tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
Yeah, so my name is Kellyanne Gonzalez. I am in the runoff for City Council District 6 here in San Antonio. I was the top vote getter on election night on May 3rd. And I was also the top fundraiser in my race. No independent expenditures on the first part of my campaign. So, we really did it all on our own. I have a really amazing team that I trust completely. We built a great plan and we executed it to perfection. And that was really our goal. We didn't spend any time really looking at our opponents' campaigns, what they were doing, because that can be a distraction. And so our focus was sticking to our plan, me being able to raise the money to execute that plan, because unfortunately you can't do a whole lot without money. And I have experience running campaigns. So I actually got involved with the local Bexar County Democratic Party in 2019. In 2018, I lost my older brother here in the district, and it was very tragic for my family. It really opened my eyes to the inequities that my community faces when it comes to healthcare access, mental health care access, and just so many other things. The trauma that people experience growing up in poverty is just, it's something that sticks with you for life, even when you are able to make it out. So I got involved with the local party in 2019. I became a precinct chair in 2020. I worked on my first congressional campaign starting in 2021, and that was Jessica Cisneros for Congress. I have her poster right here. It was an amazing campaign. We primaried the last forced birth congressman, Henry Cuellar. We lost by 167 votes. Very close. Felt that loss very deeply, but it also pushed me to make sure that I'm always working harder, to really realize that every single vote counts, every single minute counts. Right after that loss, literally a week after, I did my first actual kind of training for organizing, and that was through Arena Academy. Great program, was in Austin for a week, met a lot of really great, amazing people doing great work throughout Texas. So very fortunate for that experience. And then right after that, in July, I started working for Fair Shot Texas PAC, which was the PAC of the Texas AFL-CIO. During the campaign with Jessica, I was the only staffer here in Bexar County because it's a congressional race, so it encompasses many counties. And so I was the only staffer here in Bexar County. And so I got to know a lot of the local labor unions because I was kind of the liaison for the campaign. And so building that relationship with the local labor unions, really solidifying myself in the fact that, all these issues that we face, low income, lack of access to healthcare, no parental leave. Yes, these are all working class issues, but at the end of the day, they're also labor issues.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I saw that that what really needed to happen was the working class needed to unite and rise above. And so, so after that, I started working for the PAC for the Texas AFL-CIO. I was the regional organizing director. I hired and trained a campaign staff of 20 people, 20 canvassers, and we canvassed in 118 and 121 for Frank Ramirez and Becca Moyer de Feliz. Unfortunately, as many progressives know, we were not successful in those races either, but we put in a lot of work and we moved the needle in both of those districts. We laid the groundwork for how competitive 121 and 118 were this cycle, again, back in 2024. Very proud of the work that we did. Right after that, I went on to work for Ground Game Texas here in San Antonio. They were pushing for Proposition A, which aimed to codify the cite and release ordinance that we have in the city into our city charter, decriminalize marijuana, and decriminalize abortion. And we did it through a charter amendment process where we collected 34,000 signatures. I personally collected over 1,000 signatures myself for that. And San Antonio became the first city to put abortion on the ballot in the South.
Absolutely. Congratulations on that.
Yeah. Thank you. After we collected the signatures, after it was on the ballot, I then became the canvas manager. Once again, trained the organizers. Once again, taught them how to speak about the charter amendment because it was like, there was a lot of things that were in it. So it was probably like 6 pages long. I have it somewhere around here. So I was like, I wanted to be able to break it down for our canvassers so that they could share that information with our communities. And unfortunately, the police associations around Texas kind of banded together and spent around $2 million to defeat our effort by disseminating misinformation and propaganda.
Yeah.
And they were successful. It ultimately failed. But, I think just starting that conversation in our city, showing people that it's possible to, because, I think it's the most democratic process is a charter amendment. Like, unfortunately, like other states, Texas can't have a state referendum, but we do have in San Antonio home rule city. So we are able to amend our city charter. And so, with those experiences that I had taken in my professional career as an organizer, I was hired with ASFI, Local 2021 here in San Antonio, because of my political experience and because of my organizing experience. And so one of the first things I did when I was brought on was I read all of the administrative directives that the workers have to follow. Violating an administrative directive is grounds for termination. And so I was very surprised when I read about Administrative Directive 1.2, which is the political prohibition on city employees. So like everyone else in the city employees can vote on municipal elections. But unlike anybody else in the city and unlike any other group, they weren't allowed to campaign. They weren't allowed to volunteer, weren't allowed to donate, weren't allowed to go to any campaign event, weren't allowed to write any letters to the editors about, who they felt was best to represent their district or our city as mayor. And police and fire have been able to influence elections since the 80s. And so a little bit more information about what that's like, it would be as if teacher unions were not allowed to get involved in school board races. I mean, over the governing bodies that dictate the conditions under which their children go to school, but two are their ultimate bosses, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I knew because the Prop A had failed that charter amendment, that our current mayor was more than likely, very likely going to have his own charter amendment process because our charter can only be amended every 2 years. So when I read AD 1.2, did a little bit of research on it, found out that it was actually included in our original 1951 city charter. There was a lot of efforts in the 50s to restrict people's, political voices and voting powers, right? So very antiquated restriction. Actually, a lot of cities in Texas had a political prohibition on city employees for municipal elections, but so many of them did away with them. And we were just one of the final cities that never did.
Our next question for you is about why you're running. You've already given us some context as to what brought you to this really cool, exciting race where you're up against Rick Galvan, two progressive candidates. And thank you for sharing your background and history as well. We want to hear about the top issues for your campaign and how they connect to what voters want.
Sure. So the three pillars of my campaign are strong families, safe communities, and stable futures. And I think that one of the biggest things that families right now want to know is that there is stability in our government. There's stability in their future, in their children's lives. And one of the biggest things of my campaign that I strongly believe is that when we invest in families, we build strong communities. And so, especially right now, when we're suffering a lot of federal cut, a lot of state cuts, especially to education, I want to make sure that we are able to fill in those gaps so that families are not experiencing that loss as heavily as possible. So I ran a strong message of making sure that we are investing in families, the whole unit, from children to adults, teenagers, adults, to our senior citizens. We need to make sure that everybody has what they need, not just to survive, but to thrive in our community.
I love that. Thank you, Kellyanne. Our last question for you touches on young progressive leadership. We're seeing more and more young folks running for office, sometimes met with resistance. And we're wondering about how you think we can keep the momentum going. And if you have a policy of yours that you think correlates with that, we'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, so actually, when I announced my campaign, I was told that I should wait my turn. Mm-hmm. I was told that I was ruining the chances for the other progressive that was already in the race, that there was no way two progressives could make it into a runoff in District 6. And we proved them all wrong. And actually, the third place vote getter, whose name is Chris Becker, he was actually a libertarian, but very close associations to the Republican Party. And so had Rick not run, we would be in a race just like every other city council district race in our city, a Republican versus a Democrat.
Exactly.
I'm very proud of the fact that Rick and I were able to run on our progressive values and make sure that there isn't a Republican in our race, honestly. And so as far as like specific policy points to making sure that we have more progressives running in office, I don't have any specific policy points like laid out, but I will say my biggest supporters have been women, and specifically Latinas. I've been endorsed by Melissa Cabello Havrda. I've been endorsed by Maria Berriosabal, who was the first Latina elected to city council here in San Antonio. I've been endorsed by Rosie Castro, who is a civil rights leader, an icon, and the mother of the Castro twins. I've been endorsed by Delicia Herrera, who was the first woman that was actually elected into office in District 6 back in 2005. We had Helen Ayala in 1992, but she was actually appointed to that seat. I've also been endorsed by Honorable Ina Minjares. She was our previous state rep here in 124. And so, I mean, my biggest supporters have just been women. I plan to pass that along. I plan to help and support other young women that want to run for office. I think we need more women in office. And right now, with the way that our current runoff races are set up, we are most certainly going to have 6 women on city council in San Antonio, which is amazing. But we have the possibility of having 8. Mm-hmm. And we have never had 8 women sitting on city council in San Antonio before. And I am very excited for that possibility.
I'm from San Antonio. It's been so exciting to see how, you know, in the same exact environment where my public school system, NEISD, is famous for some of like censorship and book bans, some of that. At the same time as that, there's so much progress being made, and it's so exciting that like in District 6, we have this amazing opportunity where I'm not dreading who gets to get the election, you know? So just thank you again, Kellyanne, for joining us. Do you have any last thoughts before we pitch it off to the next candidate?
I do. Any young person, and I use the word young sparingly. I am 34 years old. I do not consider myself young. I am youth adjacent. But if you want to run for office, if you have that calling, if you have that feeling in your gut don't listen to those people that are going to tell you no, because you're going to hear no more times than you're going to hear yes. But if you have that drive, if you believe that you can put in that work, that you can win that race, that you know your district and your community and what they're going through and the issues that matter to them, run. Run scared. You will be scared. You will be tired. It will be one of the most difficult things that you will have done in your life, but it is also the most rewarding experience. Getting to know my neighbors has been such a beautiful experience for me. I love block walking. I love seeing the way everybody decorates their houses, their personalities. I love the gnomes. There's biker gnomes, there's garden gnomes, there's like hippie gnomes. So my message to you is just run, do it. Even if someone tells you two progressives can't make it into a runoff, it's not true. And the more progressives that we have running for office, even if it is just in the same race, the better choices people have, and people will make that choice. They will choose the progressives.
Joining us today, we have John P. Bowers, a proud native of Rowlett, Texas, and running for their city council, place 6. John has a long list of accolades. I'll list a few, and he can share some more in just a sec, but Bowers has a bachelor's from Morehouse College, is actually there right now, I believe, an MBA from Southern Methodist University, a background in finance, nonprofits, the church, and is a co-founder of a small business. Plus, he's the son of Rep. Retta Bowers. John, thanks for being here.
Tatum, no, thank you so much. I'm truly honored to be here and honored to really talk about the importance of our local elections, right? Especially with the state of where we are, not in Texas and also in the nation. So no, once again, I'm John P. Bowers III, running for Rowlett City Council, place 6. Happy to be leading this runoff. And like you said, I know you mentioned election day is June 7th. We want to make sure that everyone comes and votes early, vote whenever, but our early voting dates are May 27th to June 3rd. So definitely make sure you guys come out. But no, I mean, you gave a great introduction of me. I don't think I need to add anything else. The only thing I would add, right, I was a 2023 finalist for the Texas Business Hall of Fame, things of that sort. I got my MBA from SMU, as you mentioned. So no, thank you. I'm happy to be here.
So am I. I'm really excited to just jump in. Feel free to introduce yourself a little bit further. Your slogan is Together We Thrive. Please tell us, how do you embody that and why are you running?
So Together We Thrive, right? I mean, I think the biggest thing about public service and civic engagement is you don't do this alone. And the power is in the people, right? So Together We Thrive is literally a mantra of your neighbor, your friend, somebody that may be across the street, across the aisle, so to speak. You have to work together to solve these overarching problems. We aren't all on the earth at the same time for no reason, right? So I think that's really what Together We Thrive is. It's a mixture of reaching back to pull forward, but also seeing, as you mentioned, my mother, reaching up, dealing with mentorship, coaching, advocacy, and all those different types of things. That's what Together We Thrive is. And the way that I try to embody that is, treating everybody the way that, they want to be treated and I want to be treated, the golden rule, the platinum rule, just understanding that nobody is undeserving of a conversation. Like everyone deserves to be listened to, everyone deserves to be heard. And that's really how you make real impact. So my campaign is Bowers for Rowlett. So that is our social media, Bowers for Rowlett. Our website is also bowersforrowlett.com. And then if you want to find us on Facebook, we're John P. Bowers for Rowlett City Council, place 6. But the campaign itself, what it really stands for, and I think we have 6 major points, but I think the ones that I really want to highlight first and foremost is our 6th point, being united for youth success, right? As a younger candidate in this position and in the race here, I just looked around the rest of the election, the rest of the electorate, the rest of the other candidates, and I was like, hey, we're forgetting about not our present, but also our future. And these individuals, the young people in high school, middle school, right? Even elementary school, we just spoke to some 4th and 5th graders last week. They have ideas, right? It's little as, hey, we want swings on our playground.
There you go. Yeah, exactly.
That's infrastructure, right? Like that's something you want to change. All the way to, how when they get to the drivable age, like how do our streets work? How does our infrastructure of a city work? So you can't forget, no matter what age, the voice of that individual does matter and does help you govern. Another one that's big for us in Rowlett that I was dealing with, safety and security, right? I mean, crime trends have been downward, but at the same time, you want to make a better connection between your law enforcement and your community. That's the only way that we can continue to grow. We continue to have a safer and secure area. I think no matter what partisan attitude you have, these issues that we deal with at a local environment are truly nonpartisan: infrastructure, roads, taxes, what else will I say? Public safety. They're all things that have right and wrong, not red or blue, right? And I think that's where we are, and that's where I am, and that's a little bit about the
I
campaign.
love it. Are we thriving together? Yeah, exactly.
Correct.
So our next question for you is a little bit more about your policies. You've told us about some of your platform items, but tell us about your thoughts on the influx of support for progressive candidates and policies in the May election. Was your race part of this trend? And largely, what do you think is the connection between what voters want and what your progressive policies can provide?
Gotcha. And the first thing I'll say to that answer, Tatum, is really people are paying attention now more than ever, right? With the last few years have shown folk that your local government directly affects your everyday life, no matter your age, like we mentioned. And I would say too, right, there's a hunger for new voices, fresh leadership. Voters are getting tired of the status quo and decisions made behind closed doors. And we all know that our more progressive candidates are more our younger influence candidates want to be a part of the community and want to really drive communal change. So I think that's really why, right? When you look at it, and I know you asked about my race. So we were in a race of 3 people, as you mentioned, runoff. We have 2 left. And both of my opponents would definitely have opposing views to mine. And I was able to come out with 43.47% of the initial race in 3, right? So I mean, obviously we're pushing this month, this final push. Thank you guys for the spotlight to get over the hump on June 7th. But that I truly believe like progressive means being responsive to all voices, serving all voices. It means putting people first. It means fixing roads, investing in public safety, protecting our libraries, and making smart community-focused decisions. And that's why our folks showed up in May, right? And that's why, we'll see them show up in June as well. Because when you look at the ecosystem, the environment of what we're dealing with, we are seeing the exact opposite of the outcome of our November election. So I think that's why we saw this turn in the tide. And as far as my policies, you want to think about working families, helping lower tax burdens. We have some interest there with different homestead exemptions and things that we've talked about throughout the campaign trail. And that's what we want to do when elected. But truly, right, you mentioned it, are we thriving together is the question. And I think the answer to that was people were saying no, like, no, we're not. So we need to find a way to make our lives better. I mean, there's been different things. We've seen the inflation rates. We've seen different things happen as soon as, we had a new administration come into to office in DC. So it just trickles down, right? From the federal to the state level and ultimately to the local level. And then in Rowlett, yes, I mean, I'll tell you one thing, Tatum, that truly upsets me, right? The partisan nature of these nonpartisan elections. And I think that's something that we have to like really touch on. And I'm happy you asked me this question, is because this election in Rowlett, I'm running as John Bowers. That's it, because you're meant to be a neighbor, you're meant to be a friend, and just someone that your neighbors and friends and community members can see to represent them. That is the ultimate point. But yes, my race has huge partisan implications from a different party. And like I said, like just being able to cut through that and let's get this victory on June 7th is a truly big win, especially in the area that we're running, Rowlett, being so close to Rockwall and that conservative, more strenuous nature. But I've tried to cut through that by talking to everybody regardless, because once again, these issues are not partisan.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's the benefit of some of the highlighting of these local elections is, you've definitely seen this like politicization of public schools, yes, of these things that all of our folks depend on, and particularly children. You pointed that out earlier. Like, children are out on the streets, walking to school, they go to school, they depend on the library for going home from school. And all of these things are being pulled away from. We've been following the Texas legislature, our team has, and I'll just give an example of the local and consent calendar. Typically nonpartisan items that just get passed through, and they've been held for partisan matters. And so it's not a problem specific to local elections. It goes beyond that, but it's definitely, I think you're right that it was a response, these May elections, and voters turning out for it. Our next question for you relates to the legacy of progressive leadership that you're coming from. Would you share with our audience about your mother's mentorship, passing the baton to you, and how that's impacted your sense of leadership and your campaign?
Wow. This is a truly heartfelt question. And I really, am happy to get this chance to speak about it in the campaign. So my mother, for the audience, State Representative Retta Andrews Bowers, House District 113. Her mentorship, right? I think the biggest thing about it is I'm able to call on her not just as my mother, but then also someone that has also, put their name on a ballot, right? Because once again, I learned that only 2% of the world does that. So it's kind of interesting. So I've been able to learn from her, see her do it for a decade now. And now stepping into that, I know the last part you mentioned as far as, passing the baton. And I wouldn't even say it's truly passing the baton because we're still both we're still both actively in this fight, right?
Yeah.
So I think, I get to see not a colleague, I'm not a state level official, but I get to see my mom as also a partner along the road. And I think that's been so special, right? She taught me that you don't speak for people, you listen to them and then you fight for them, right? She also taught me how to lead with both grit and grace. Showed me how to stay grounded, stay honest, keep my head held high because there's crazy things that happen. And then also, and never forget who you're doing the work for, because at the end of the day, the people that vote for you are the people that put you in this office, that give you this platform. But the way that her leadership has showed me is literally the representation of her being there. Seeing her in those rooms gives me and so many others confidence to believe that I belonged in them too. And I will say, I think, my mother has always led with heart. Our community's love and respect for her, watching her serve in state politics. I definitely learned early on that leadership isn't about ego, it's about impact. So I think that's how it's truly shaped my leadership. And once again, I'm excited to come June 7th, win this election and serve with her in a official capacity to really drive some change. I mean, I really think that's the state of the state of Texas, right? State of the state, if you will. We're trying to see where our roads will lead and where we're going forward to in 2026, 2028, right? And that's how my mother's mentorship and perspective really. But on the campaign trail, she definitely taught me a lesson. And for anyone in the audience that hears this and wants to decide to run for office one day, I would say, if you do one, this is what she told me straight from my mother's mouth. If you do one thing for the campaign every day, you're doing something and you're moving your campaign forward, right? Because it is a daunting task. You don't know when the election will be over. Election day was May 3rd, and now I'm running still, right? So if you continue to do one thing every day, move forward, whether it's block walking, whether it's phone banking, whether it's dialing for dollars, whether it's ordering a sign, putting a sign down, at least it's one thing, you're moving your message forward. So I say just take it a step at a time. And hopefully you heard my mother's lessons come through in me. But, I definitely have enjoyed walking step by step and side by side with her.
I think you have such a unique perspective with that. And thank you for sharing that, those personal remarks too. I also just want to shout out, like you live by that sense of leadership. Go check out his About page, because there's a long list of John connecting with his community in a ton of different ways, whether it's with the church or giving to the North Texas Food Bank. Is it North Texas Food Bank specifically?
Yeah. So the one in Rowlett that the North Texas Food Bank filters in is Hope in Hand. But yes, the food bank. Yep.
Yeah. So I think definitely in the campaign, there's a lot of different ways that you can connect with your community and be a leader in that regard. But it's definitely also about this community service, and you've certainly lived by that. So just thank you again. And that is our last question for you, unless you have any last thoughts, things you want to share with the audience.
I think, one last thing, when we think about together we thrive, right? It's legitimately just an effort, a movement in order to see, right? Our neighbors are our neighbors, our peers are our peers. But without one another, we will not make any impact. So, if you take that and you go forward, we will thrive. So thank you.
I love that. And I think that embodies this episode too. Like, it's a statewide movement and we're all doing it together. That is all we have for John. Thank you again for joining. And for our DFW and North Texas friends, keep the party going and mark your calendars for Monday, June 9th. That's our 15th anniversary celebration in Dallas. We look forward to seeing you there, and click in the show notes to RSVP early. It's time to take these local elections and scale them up to new heights. Here at Progress Texas, we're working hard to scale our work and reach larger numbers of Gen X, Millennial, and Gen Z Texans, and give voice to a growing majority of people with the ultimate goal of leading to a more representative democracy. We rely mostly on everyday Texans who value our hard work and share our belief that a Texas that works for everybody is the Texas we want to live in. We don't do subscriptions or paywalls because we believe the message of progress is one that everyone should be able to access, learn from, and act upon. So if you've become a regular listener, we could use your support, and no amount is too small. Go to progresstexas.org/donate, and thank you for listening and all you do to press progress forward here in the Lone Star State. See you next time. Bye now.
The Progress Texas Happy Hour is a production of Progress Texas, a rapid response media organization promoting progressive messages and actions. Find us online at progresstexas.org and on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. The podcast is produced by me, Chris Mosier, and our featured music is by Walker Lukens. Please be sure and subscribe to the Progress Texas Happy Hour on the podcast platform of your choice. Take a moment to leave us a review if you've enjoyed the show, and be sure and tell your friends about us. Thanks for listening and for all you do to press progress forward here in the Lone Star State. We'll see you again next week.